Hello and welcome to my podcast. Do me a favor, subscribe to the John Keim Report wherever you get your podcasts. You're watching on YouTube, and if you are, you can see that I'm doing this from a different locale, not my house. But if you're watching us on YouTube, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. You can find us there as part of Empire Media. That's AMPIRE. Always, always, always much appreciated. And don't forget, you can read my work on ESPN.com. You can follow me on Twitter at John_Keim. Just throwing it out there. Also, today, I am joined by salary cap guru Joel Corry, former NFL agent, also host of the Inside the Cap podcast on Empire Media. And I wanted to bring Joel in at this time of the year because he's always insightful with the money end of this business. And it is a big business, of course. So we run down a lot of the what's it going to cost to sign Daron Payne? What's it going to cost to possibly sign Montez Sweat, the Chase Young 5th-year option situation, all that stuff. Cole Holcomb, what's his value? One thing I forgot to ask him because I was so focused on guys who are free agents right now is Cam Curl. What is his value and what does he think he would command? He thinks Curl's side would probably ask for something north of 15 million or so. But he also said a lot of it depends on Cincinnati free agent Jesse Bates, safety, probably the top safety on the market, depending on what he gets. Spotrac, for example, projected Bates to only get around 14 million. So if that's the case, then Curl's number would come down a little bit. We're also looking at Bates as a free agent right now versus Curl would be eligible for an extension, not for agency. So he still has another year on his deal. If he sees that, maybe he plays out, who knows? But anyway, I'm sure they're going to try and get something done with him in the spring. But anyway, that gives you some sense of the value. I did not get into Antonio Gibson that much because curious to see where that's going to go, but I'll get into more of his situation probably in the spring when it gets time where they would really go after those kind of deals. The other stuff is more pressing, and so that's why I wanted to take on that first. So before I get to my conversation with Joel, a couple things. The combine, obviously, and I'm going to get to the ownership stuff in a minute because it's been a lot of crazy stuff floating around. Combine starts this week. Ron Rivera will talk to the media on Tuesday. I am not going to be at the combine. ESPN will be well represented, and we will have stuff from Rivera. He'll be at the podium. It's going to be aired or streamed, and then I'll also probably end up having a story off it somehow. Martin Mayhew will talk at the podium on Wednesday, so stay tuned for that, and we'll get some updates from other people throughout the week. So there you go. That's one thing. Number two, the ownership situation. So there's a lot going on. I'm going to caution everybody to not overreact to everything that you see coming out, because what you always have to ask yourself in these situations is, what is somebody's motive here? Why is this story being leaked out? What does this mean? And it's funny because there's so much stuff that I feel like gets thrown out there. And then you hear one side will say this, the other side say that's not even close to being accurate. This isn't, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So I just caution you not to overreact to everything that gets reported or is put out there. There's some things that are worth looking at. And what we know is that as far as like Jeff Bezos, a lot of stuff floating around about him. What we know is that there's no official bid from him on the Commanders. We know that he hired Allen and Company at some point, whether it was recent or in the last couple of months, to look into a possible bid on the Commanders. You hear a lot of things with the Snyders sell to Bezos, owner of the Washington Post. And, is he blocking him? Is he this or that? You hear about the blocking stuff. Is he being blocked from it? You hear one side says, somebody says one thing, somebody else says another, somebody else says something else. So I'm just going to caution you to not overreact to everything that comes out. And the other thing is, even if Bezos does or doesn't buy it, there are other people who are worthy owners. We don't know what kind of an owner Jeff Bezos would be. So I wouldn't overreact to whatever his presence is. There's a reason why his presence keeps getting put out there, or his name keeps getting put out there by whoever it is, right? So just don't overreact. I still think that Dan Snyder is going to sell. You hear one day, you hear that he has 3 bidders and that he has an offer over $6 billion. Then you hear that he doesn't have anything, in that over $6 billion, that it's certainly lower. We'll find out when it all comes out. I do think, like I said, there's a lot of stuff going on. And one reason why I've been somewhat quiet on this, and as far as like stories or even on Twitter, because I don't think there's a lot of stuff that either I'm comfortable reporting because I think there's still more to learn, or you hear somebody squash it. And while it might be a great headline, I'm not sure that it's something that I want to run with. So that's why I want you guys to know that. And I do think, like I said, a caution on your end is the best way to approach this, because you're going to hear a lot of stuff over the next month about various things. And as my pal Rick Snyder would talk about, like all the subterfuge and how certain groups might use people to try and get information out there, or other to find their own information, whatever it is. Just be cautious. That's all I'm asking you for right now. And that's what I am as a reporter. I'm overly cautious, but that's the way it is. I just think it serves me better. I think it serves you better. So there you go. That's enough on all that stuff. We'll hear more about the ownership stuff, and we'll probably have some more stuff about that this week. But so let's talk some money, but money for players, not the team. That's why let's get to my conversation with salary cap guru, former NFL agent, also writes for CBS Sports, and the host of the Inside the Cap podcast, Joel Corry. Well, Joel, you're always a popular guy to talk to this time of the year, and people should listen to your podcast, as part of the Empire Network. So, popular, free agency coming up. I want to focus a little bit more first on the Washington players, and then some of the bigger names, the Lamar Jackson types and all that. But the big name here is Daron Payne. And before people listen to this, it may be possible that he's already been tagged. I do expect him to get tagged. Financially, they want to get a deal done with Daron Payne. What are we looking at?
Well, first of all, if you told me this time last year Daron Payne was getting franchise tagged, I would have laughed at you, but he played himself into it. Problem is he's got Joel Siegel as an agent, and I mean that as a compliment. Yeah. Joel Siegel is one of the best in the business. So this is not going to be a cheap deal. If you're thinking Jonathan Allen territory, good luck. Joel Siegel represents DeForest Buckner. DeForest Buckner in 2020 became the second highest paid interior defensive lineman behind Aaron Donald at $21 million per year. I would imagine the first thing Joel Siegel is going to do is take that deal, adjust for cap inflation. That's going to put you at almost $24 million per year. Do I think Daron Payne gets $24 million per year? No. But I imagine that comes up in the negotiation. Then the next thing he might look at is, well, Aaron Donald's original deal, which was a ceiling for everybody else, was at $22.5 million per year. So if I can get in the $22.5 million per year range, then maybe that's where Joel Siegel would be comfortable accepting something. So it's going to cost you a lot more than you're anticipating to sign Daron Payne. And if you don't sign him early, Joel Siegel is going to wait for this reason. You have until July 17th, normally July 15th to sign. Is the deadline for long-term deals for franchise players, but that's a Saturday this year, so it extends to the following Monday, the 17th. He's going to wait and see what happens with the rest of the market. You've got three young guys, who are in fifth-year options. Quentin Williams, who wants a deal before they start the offseason workout program in April. Jeffrey Simmons in Tennessee, and Dexter Lawrence with the Giants. All three of those guys should blow past that Aaron Donald original mark of $22.5 million per year. Then the big one is Chris Jones. He's in a contract year. He's got such a high cap number that it's going to be impossible to franchise him next year because that number will be over $35 million. If anyone has a case to say I should be close to or more than Aaron Donald, it is Chris Jones.
Right.
And this is under the theory that a rising tide will lift all boats, that if these guys end up getting more than that Aaron Donald amount, and I expect Jones, the original Aaron Donald amount, $22.5 million, I expect Jones to be a lot closer to the actual Aaron Donald contract of $31.67 million per year. So if those guys are getting close to $25 million per year, then that's only going to help Payne. You can't have the market as it is currently constituted, where Aaron Donald averages 50% more than everybody else who's at the high end of the market. So it's going to change.
How much do you think Payne, or how much money do you think he made this year? Like, on a deal going into the year, what would you have thought a deal for him would look like versus now?
Well, I thought if he could get to 17 million per year, I was thinking more Kenny Clark Vita
Vita Vea.
type of money.
Yeah.
That's out the window. Never thought he'd be above Jonathan Allen. So yeah, he's made himself pretty penny this year.
And it speaks to, because I know like they could have done this last summer and taken care of it, but they all kind of gambled. Do you think and knowing what you know about Joel, do you think that he would have told Daron, don't sign anything now, or let's just see how the season goes? Do you think that would have been his strategy to kind of
I'm
get
sure
to
he
this
had a
point?
number in mind. If you were going to hit that number, he'd have done the deal.
Okay.
And that was always what I thought when I was an agent, that if you give me my number and I like the structure, I don't need to incur the risk of poor performance in free agency and poor performance and injury in a contract year to get to free agency. I'll take my deal on the extension.
Right. And I think part of it too is they didn't want to give him John Allen money. And
Now they're going to have to.
Yeah. I mean, and how should teams look at that? Because when they signed Allen, it'll be this summer, it'll be 2 years from the deal. Like, can you really compare those deals in a 1-for-1? If it's more about percentage of the cap that he got versus the money per year.
Well, they're also looking at it if they think Allen's the better player from a salary hierarchy standpoint. Right. They're not going to want to pay the guy that they don't feel is quite as good. I don't know if they think that way, but right. If they do, that factors into their considerations.
How about the tag? Because again, they're going to end up tagging him because the deadline is March 7th. And yes. It's the only way they're not going to let him test it. They want it to be just, get exclusive and do that. How much will the tag impact what happens after that?
Yeah, the tag's sitting on the cap, but you're going to be able to afford that because it comes out of what you're going to save with Carson Wentz. You're going to pick up almost 26.2 million from Carson Wentz not being around, so that will more than comfortably cover the tag. Doesn't give you tons of room to do other stuff. Ideally, the Commanders want a long-term deal sooner rather than later because the way they've been structuring deals, if they go big signing bonus, low base salary first year, so the cap number in 2023 for Payne should never exceed 10 million if they do what they've been doing before. It might be less than that.
What do you think when we talked last year going into the offseason, or I think it was the value for guys like Montez Sweat, Chase Young, what do you think their value is now going forward? Because Montez is going into the 5th year of his deal. Chase, we don't know yet if they're going to pick up that 5th year option. So both of them conceivably would be free agents after next year if they don't pick up Chase's 5th year option. What do you think their value would look like down the road?
Well, this is where Payne throws a wrinkle into everything. I didn't think you could keep all 4 guys, and I thought Payne was the odd man out. And if you're going to pay 2 guys at the position to be the edge rushers, but now you're going to pay the interior guys. So that's why the Chase Young decision becomes interesting. With Montez Sweat, I'm looking at Bradley Chubb, and I'm like, well, he's at 22. I want to be close to that. I don't know if he can get that, but that's what I'd be looking for. And then Chase Young is interesting from the standpoint that he was Rookie of the Year, Defensive Rookie of the Year, went to the Pro Bowl. The second year was concerning because the sacks dropped to 1.5 in the 9 games he'd actually play before he tore up his knee. Then it took a long time to come back this year. So there's not a lot of track record. There is one guy where there's a precedent for what happened and different position, but with the Chargers, Derwin James, great rookie year and played 5 games in year 2 and year 3. They still, it's a different price point, but they did pick up the 5th year option, and then he went back to being Derwin James. Now, if I'm the Commanders and I gamble, and he was picked that high for a reason, was the Rookie of the Year for a reason. Let's say I don't pick up the 5th year option. This is a contract year. You're going to have to put a franchise tag on him if he turns back into who you thought he was going to be when you drafted him. And then if I'm the agent, I'm doing you 0 favors because you could have had the 5th year, and you're going to have to franchise me, or I'm looking to leave.
Right.
Now, what I would do if I'm the team is, I know it's going to be 17.452 million, and it will be fully guaranteed. I pick it up because of the James precedent and also to preserve some flexibility. Let's say that he comes back and he's not what he was as a rookie, but still shows like he's going to be pretty good. Then I have a 5th-year option where if I'm not still sold on Chase Young being what I thought he would be, but he's still a good player, I can trade him someplace.
Right.
Get something in return. If I don't pick up the 5th-year option, yeah, I'll get a compensatory pick and hopefully a 3rd-round pick in 2025. But I'd rather preserve my options and take the risk that he's going to be close to what he should be and be worth the 17, almost 5 on the 5th-year option, and figure out what I'm going to do with Montez Sweat. It'll be interesting to see if they do an extension for Sweat now or let him play it out. But I tend to think it may be an either-or proposition with who's there long-term, because it's going to be hard to keep all 4. Although if Sam Howell is your quarterback,
Right.
you have a cost-contained, cheap quarterback, you could splurge on the defensive line because you got a 5th-round pick quarterback, and that's about as good of a value as you're ever going to get if he's the guy, which we don't know.
If he's the guy. Do you look for, when you're trying to analyze some of this stuff, how much do you look for what they're saying versus their actions and all that? Like, what are little clues that you look for to see how somebody feels about a guy's value?
Well, anytime the coach or the front office says something glowing about the player, I used to love that as an agent. I would call that my own personal Miranda rule, that you have the right to remain silent. Anything you say positive about my client can and will be used against you in a contract negotiation. I used to actually keep a file of any time someone, front office, coaching staff, said something flattering or positive about a client, and it did come up in negotiations. Now, the whole Chase Young non-committal thing makes me wonder if they're kind of soured on the guy.
Yeah, and I think a lot of what they want to see, Joel, is his commitment to being there in the offseason, something that they haven't always seen in the past. I definitely think that's part of the equation there for him. And, and it's funny because toward the end of the year, one of the reporters asked Ron Rivera about some players, and he was already starting to get into negotiation mode because he kind of shot it down. Like, you think I want to say these great things about this guy and then have the agent use this? And there's part of me that says, like, well, wouldn't the agent
player? So his agent probably did the same thing.
Yeah. Oh yeah, definitely. But it is funny because how often would that pay off for you? Like, and what would the reaction be if you're whipping out these positive quotes?
Sometimes those teams tried to ignore it, like they never said it. I'm like, I can send it to you. But it really happened with Jimmy Smith to the Jaguars that Tom Coughlin had called him the best receiver in the league. I was like, thank you very much.
How much extra money did that get him, do you think?
I don't know how much extra, but I kept hammering that point home. It was like a broken record after a while. And it was like, we know, we heard that. I'm like, well, you said it, you shouldn't have said it.
You have to use everything in negotiations, right?
Yes.
That's what it's for, So, but what about what about a guy like Cole Holcomb, free agent linebacker coming off an injury? What do you think his market value might be if they want to keep him?
Here's the problem with the off-ball linebacker market. Most of these guys are going to look at Foye Oluokun, that type of thing, and overvalue themselves. DeAndre Campbell did that for a couple of years, played on one-year deals, finally got the long-term deal from Green Bay. Bobby Wagner, who hasn't really lost a step when he was released by Seattle, had a hard time getting to $10 million per year when it really should have been more. So you got to be careful if you're an off-ball linebacker and how you value yourself. Otherwise, you're going to be playing on a one-year deal at $4 or $5 million per year. A couple of these guys will get paid like Tremaine Edmonds.
Right.
I don't know where TJ Edwards comes in. He should be a double-digit per year guy. That remains to be seen. But that market, more than any other market, you better be very careful on how you value yourself.
What do you think Edmonds will get?
If I'm him, I'm trying to get in that CJ Mosley territory, That deal was done, I think, 2019. I want more than that, 17 million per year. The only problem with Buffalo, and this gets back to what I was talking about, who's the better player. They got Matt Milano when he was coming off of an injury-plagued year where he played like 35%. His deal averages like 10.4 million per year. He's the Pro Bowler All-Pro guy. Edmonds isn't. They're going to have to pay him more than that to keep him. Then let's say they keep him, they have cap problems anyway. Do you have to adjust Milano because of a pay discrepancy between the two? I expect he's going to go someplace else in free agency and get paid. He's the guy out of the off-ball linebackers I expect to get paid.
What do you think a dollar amount would be good for a Heineke? Because these guys want to sign a veteran quarterback to pair with Howell, and Howell's going to go in. Howell's going to have to lose the job. So you're going to get a Heineke level type. Maybe, I don't know about Brissett, may have gone a little bit above that right now. But what do you think that range of a guy in that range would cost them?
Well, one, by all accounts, he seems to have the right demeanor and attitude. He did not make too big of a stink when they went back to Carson Wentz when they shouldn't have late in the season. I'd look more at what happened with Teddy Bridgewater and Tyrod Taylor. Bridgewater signed a one-year deal for $6.5 million, maxed out at 10 of incentives. Tyrod Taylor, $11 million over 2, maxes out at $17 million. Even Jimmy Garoppolo took a pay cut for a base value of $7 million with much more incentives. So somewhere in that neighborhood for the base value, I'd say 5.5 to 7 would be the average, and then upside where he plays, and he could make upwards to 12 million depending upon how much he plays.
Right, and get some more of those Jordans. Get some
Yeah,
more
exactly.
Jordan,
So, collection.
Yeah. There you go. Then the other guys that I want to talk to you about too is because these guys need offensive linemen, tackles. Whether they're going to replace their guards, whether it's moving right tackle Sam Cosmi inside to right guard or keep him out at right tackle, they're going to have some. I think they'll have two different guards. How is that market shaping up as far as what? If you wanted to get a top guard, top tackle, you have guys like it's Orlando Brown, McClinchy from San Francisco, McGarry, guys like that.
Orlando Brown's not going anywhere. They're going to stick a second franchise tag on him for like 19.9. Caleb McGarry would scare me just from the standpoint that he performed so poorly coming into this year. They didn't pick up his fifth-year option, puts it all together. Buyer beware free agent. His fifth-year option, I think, was a little over $12 million. He's probably going to look at the Jack Conklin deal, who just re-upped with Cleveland for $15 million per year towards the end of the regular season. McGlinchey probably be looking at the top of the tackle market, anywhere from 17 to 19 million. There's a interesting guy from a left tackle standpoint that is hitting the open market. Taylor Lewan, he's getting cut by the Titans, injury prone, 2 ACL tears last couple of years. When he was healthy, was a Pro Bowl guy, previously was the highest paid offensive lineman in the league. That may be a 1-year prove-it deal with some incentives because he barely played last year, but you may want to just kick the tires on it and see.
Right, yeah, because I think depending on where they want to go, depending if they'd want him at right tackle or left, because you still have Leno that they have to pay. The guard market too, like it's Reisner, who else is there? Powers, Nate Davis. I know Matt Bowen from ESPN projected Davis to Washington, or at least his prediction was. How is that market looking? Because last year it seemed like the guards were starting to go pretty high.
I don't think any of these guys get above Lake and Tomlinson. Okay. So you're talking no more than 13 million per year. Don't forget Isaac Sumalu from the Eagles. I don't think he'll be back in Philly. And taking someone from division rival.
That was another one. Yep. Thanks.
Probably between 10 and 13 for these guys.
Which isn't bad. Which is funny to say, because like last year, that market went too high in my belief, just for what you're getting.
You don't have any Joe Toonies out there this year to pay. There's no Joel Petonios or Wyatt Tellers, who both re-signed with the Browns last year.
So just a couple more, and let's go to the quarterbacks. And these guys are not going to, again, any quarterback they get is going to be that mid-level veteran type who is comfortable backing.
Yeah, so you might as well stick with Heineke because he knows the system. You know what you got with him.
Right, and so then
nobody's going to make him a starter.
No, they're not. And so from a national perspective, you got Lamar, Derek Carr, and then what do you do with Daniel Jones? What do you think happens with those quarterbacks? And by the time, like the Carr situation might be settled by the time, because this will be out on Monday, that might be settled by the time it comes out. But as we sit right now, what do you think?
Well, Carr's taking his time. From what his brother said, he's going to
Yes.
do all his due diligence and make the right decision. First thing I'm trying to do is be made whole. He had like, I think 116 over 3 left on the contract. I don't think he gets that high. He had like 40 million of guarantees, which the Raiders didn't pick up. Should get more guarantees, but keep in mind that the average starting salary for a quarterback on a veteran contract was 32 million per year, according to FLPA data. So it's probably at least that per year. Jones is an interesting case from the standpoint that if those reports are accurate, if the agent switch, he's asking for 45 million per year. That screams you're playing on your franchise tag for 32.4 million.
Yeah.
And if I'm the Giants, I'm looking at it from the standpoint as, dude, we didn't pick up that option for a reason because you hadn't done anything for 3 years. You were good this year. You weren't great. You weren't 45 million great.
No.
Nobody's going to give up 2 first-round picks for you, so we can go non-exclusive tag. I would be looking to do my 45 is too high. That's not getting done. And I don't know what precipitated the agent switch. I would have come in 40 over 3. Looking at basically if you tag me 3 times and give you a slight discount, and I'd be willing to settle for on a 3-year deal in between 35 and probably 38 with the first 2 years fully guaranteed, with some incentives and upside based on what I do. Now Lamar, that's the one which is taking up all the oxygen nationally. He's not hitting the open market. There's that anyone who says he could be a free agent, I'm like, you're just trying to generate attention unnecessarily. Correct. It comes down first to whether he's going to relent on the fully guaranteed contract. I don't think he is. 2, are the Ravens going to give it to him? No. He got injured this year, so that's less incentive to want to give someone a fully guaranteed contract. 3, who is going to help him in the market get a fully guaranteed contract? I think no one. Jalen Hurts won't get one. It won't be Joe Burrow because they don't guarantee anything in their veteran contracts outside of signing bonus. They're not going to go from 0 to 100, go from nothing to fully guaranteed. They'll do like Pittsburgh did with TJ Watt, where they didn't do anything which was besides signing bonus except for Ben Roethlisberger, and that was injury guarantees only. They'll give them conventional guarantees. Justin Herbert, I don't think will get one. So he's still sitting out there on an island. Now, the question is, do you go non-exclusive where you invite an offer sheet? And that's how somebody may give him a fully guaranteed contract out of desperation and his 2 first-round picks if it isn't matched. That's $32.416 million. I wouldn't do that for one reason. 1, if you want the guy, why put him at risk? And 2 first-round picks is not enough for Lamar Jackson. The reason I say that is you had 2 quarterbacks last year, Deshaun Watson, go for 3 first-round picks plus. Russell Wilson went for 3 first-round picks plus as well. So the market for Lamar Jackson should be a minimum of 3 first-round picks. Plus you've had non-quarterbacks go for more than 2 first-round picks in recent years. Jamal Adams, a safety, Jalen Ramsey, and Laramie Tunsil. So that screams exclusive franchise tag, which means it's a closed negotiation. Can't shop yourself for an offer sheet. The price point is different. Right now, the exclusive tag projects to $45.248 million, but is subject to change based on what else happens in the market between now and the restricted signing period, free agent signing period on April 21. So restructures could push that number down. But the thing is, you only have to count the player at the non-exclusive tag initially until that number gets finalized April 22nd or 23rd. So that buys you some time to not have all the cap room count and maybe get a deal done. I've always thought this was a 2024 problem. Some people say Lamar won't play on a franchise tag, let's say the exclusive for $45 million. He hadn't made that much in his career yet. And it's easy to say, I won't play on for such and such. Jesse Bates was saying it. I'm not going to play on the tag. And what did he do? Play on it. If Lamar's made 31, 32 million in his career and he can make 45 on one tag, he'll probably do it. He may not show up until real late. And that's a problem when you have a new offensive coordinator. Then 2024 is the reckoning year where it's 54 million the second tag, because the third tag in 2025 would be almost 78 million, and that would never happen.
Right. And, the funny thing, to be clear, like, I know there were a couple of people touting the Commanders as possibly, should they trade for him? Like, they're not trading for him. They don't want to give up the picks. They don't have the money to give up, and then it restricts them from doing so many things. So anybody who's wondering about that, put it out of your heads. Not going to happen. Last thing, Joel, is there a team that you're watching more than any other to see how they handle the offseason because of the cap and the money situation they're in?
Yeah, the Chicago Bears. First of all, they got like 95 million in cap room. So they should be, and I think they're below the minimum spending of 90%. And it's over a 3-year period, and it's the last year of the 3-year period. So they're going to have to spend money. Then outside of the free agency, well, they do a quarterback.
Right.
They've got the number 1 pick. There's been a school of thought that if you think that Bryce Young is better than Justin Fields, who has more upside, maybe you take him number 1 and then trade Fields. If you're set on Fields as your guy, someone should want to move up, like maybe Indy to number 1. You can pick up an extra first-round pick and something else and move down no more than 4th, so you can be in a position to get either Jalen Carter or Will Anderson.
I think the other team to me too is Philly, because they do have a number of key free agents. And then there's the Jalen Hurts talk. What do you think happens there? With not just with their situation in general, because they do have, I think I remember when I think it was, again, Matt Bowen put out his top 50 list. I think like 6 of them were Eagles within the top 40 or something like that.
Yeah, they've got a ton of guys. First, is Jason Kelce going to retire or play football? That's one decision. Fletcher Cox won't be back the way that contract is structured. Brandon Graham, he was a luxury to have this year. You can't have a situational pass rusher on a cap number of 9.4 again. He had 11 sacks. He'll probably go elsewhere and get money. This Hurts deal, to me, your floor is Kyler Murray, which is $46.1 million per year. Kyler Murray's been to 1 playoff game, and the Rams probably should have given him a game ball for how poorly he played in that playoff game. Hurts was MVP runner-up, was the best player in the Super Bowl. So that's your absolute worst case scenario. What the Eagles did with Carson Wentz was they made him the 4th highest paid player in the league when they gave him his extension. So that's 46 if you go by that for Deshaun Watson. I'd look more to what happened with another quarterback in Wentz's draft class, Jared Goff. He got an extension later that year, which tied him for the 2nd highest paid player in the league at the time. He was a guy that was an MVP candidate until he had a late season slump. They got to the Super Bowl and lost. He was unimpressive in the Super Bowl. Nonetheless, he still became the 2nd highest paid player. Right now, the 2nd highest paid player is Russell Wilson at $49 million per year. To me, the magic number, if I represent Jalen Hurts, is $50 million per year. I want on a 4-year extension. I'm not doing any of this Patrick Mahomes nonsense, because I guarantee you Patrick Mahomes may not say it publicly, but he sees all these quarterbacks going by his $45 million per year. He ain't happy. If he isn't happy, he will be unhappy within 2 years when you have double-digit quarterbacks making more than he does. That's human nature.
And that's why these guys need Sam Howell to make it work, because those numbers are unbelievable. Joel, thanks for coming on. Tell people where they can find your work.
Okay. You can listen to my podcast, Inside the Cap, on contracts and salary cap matters. Usually do one episode weekly, sometimes 2. Also, you can run a regular CBSSports.com column, Agent Stake, as well. The next article that's coming out will be a frequently asked questions about franchise and transition tags.
There you go, Joel. Thanks a lot, man. I always love talking to you this time of the year, because you're so important with your knowledge. Thank you.
Thank you.
That's it for this episode. Thanks to Joel for joining me, and thank you, as always, for listening. I'll be back on Tuesday night / Wednesday morning with another podcast. So we'll talk to you next time.